I was sanding down the legs of an old rocking chair in my garage when my phone buzzed on the workbench. It was a Thursday afternoon in late November, the kind of gray, damp day that settles over Vancouver Island like a wool blanket, and I'd been working through a list of small repairs I'd been putting off since the summer. I wiped sawdust off my hands with a rag and picked up the phone, expecting maybe a reminder from my dentist or a text from my buddy Gerald about our Saturday fishing trip. Instead, it was a text from my daughter-in-law, Diane. Just 3 lines. "Hi, Walter. Hope you're well. Can you check your email when you get a chance? Sent you something important about the holidays. Thanks, Diane." Nobody sends a formal email about the holidays unless the news inside it isn't good. I set down the sandpaper and walked inside, poured myself a glass of water, and sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop. The subject line read, "Christmas plans wanted to give you plenty of notice." I opened it and read slowly. "Hi, Walter. Hope you're keeping warm up there. Connor and I have been talking with my dad, Raymond, and since he's flying in from Calgary for the full week, we've decided to keep Christmas Day itself, just for our immediate household. It'll be a lot with the kids' routines and everything, and we want it to feel calm and cozy. We're so grateful for all the support you've given us, especially with Owen's therapy costs. We were thinking maybe you could come by on the 27th or 28th for a visit. We'd love that. Warmly, Diane." I read it twice, then a third time. Immediate household. As if I wasn't family. As if 2 years of covering the cost of my grandson, Owen's speech therapy, and occupational therapy, close to $38,000 in total, somehow didn't earn me a seat at the Christmas table. As if every Saturday morning I spent driving 40 minutes each way to take Owen and his little sister Lily to the science center or the swimming pool didn't count for anything. As if I was a nice option on a good day, but inconvenient when someone more important was in town. I closed the laptop and looked out the window at the backyard. The birch tree my late wife Carolyn had planted the year Connor was born was bare now, its white branches catching the last of the afternoon light. She'd been gone 3 years. Pancreatic cancer, fast and cruel, and in the time since, I'd learned to fill the quiet with purpose, the woodworking, the Saturday drives to see the grandkids, the slow work of staying useful. Carolyn would have known exactly what to do with an email like that. She'd have called Connor within the hour, warm but direct, and he'd have listened because he always listened to her. I didn't have that same pull with him. I don't think I ever had. He was a good man, my son, but he was also the kind of man who bent toward whoever was pushing hardest. And for the past 4 years, the one pushing hardest had been Raymond. Let me explain how we got here. When Connor married Diane 7 years ago, I was genuinely happy for them. Diane was bright, organized, practical. She worked as a project manager for a construction firm and ran their household the same way she ran a job site with spreadsheets and timelines and very little patience for loose ends. I respected that, even when it made things feel a little stiff between us. Her father, Raymond, was a different matter. Raymond Kowalski was a retired insurance broker from Calgary who had done well for himself and wanted everyone to know it. He drove a truck that cost more than my first house. He had opinions about everything, parenting, diet, real estate, hockey, and most especially about how his daughter's family ought to be run. He wasn't cruel exactly. He was the kind of man who delivers criticism as advice and control as generosity. He'd fly in twice a year, dominate every room he walked into, and fly back to Alberta, leaving behind a family that had somehow quietly reorganized itself around his preferences. At Connor and Diane's wedding rehearsal dinner, Raymond had pulled me aside near the bar and said, with a big hand on my shoulder, "Walt, I just want to say I'm going to take good care of these two. You don't have to worry about a thing." I'd smiled and thanked him. But the way he said it had stayed with me. Not a reassurance, a declaration. He wasn't telling me I could relax. He was telling me I could step back. When the grandkids arrived, Owen first, then Lily 2 years later, I threw myself into being present. I showed up. I was reliable. I never canceled, never arrived empty-handed, never made Connor and Diane feel guilty for asking me to help. When Owen was diagnosed at age 4 with a speech delay and some sensory processing challenges, the therapy costs hit them hard. They were carrying a mortgage in Nanaimo. Diane was on reduced hours to manage school pickups, and Connor's income as an electrician, while steady, didn't stretch easily to $400 a week therapy appointments. They didn't ask me. I want to be clear about that. It was Connor who mentioned, carefully, that they were looking at cutting back Owen's sessions from 3 times a week to once, because of the cost. He wasn't angling for help. He was just telling me, the way you tell your father things, quietly, so you're not carrying it alone. I didn't hesitate. I called the therapy clinic directly and set up billing to my account. 3 sessions a week, every week, for 2 years. Owen was 6 when we started. He was 8 now. His speech had come a long way. He still had hard days, but he'd started reading chapter books, had made 2 real friends at school, and last spring he'd stood up at his class presentation and talked for 4 whole minutes about how volcanoes work. I'd sat in the back of that classroom and cried in a way I hadn't since Carolyn's funeral. That was what my money had bought, not tuition at some fancy school. A little boy finding his voice. And now I wasn't welcome at Christmas. I sat at that kitchen table for a long time after reading Diane's email. I thought about calling Connor right away, but I'd learned over the years that my first reaction in moments like these was never my best one. So instead, I got up, went back to the garage, and kept sanding. When something feels unfair, I've found that keeping your hands busy gives your mind time to catch up. That evening, I opened my files and started pulling things together. Bank records showing every transfer to the therapy clinic, receipts for the kids' birthday gifts, Christmas presents, the new winter boots I'd bought Owen last month because Connor had mentioned his old ones were too small. Emails from Diane thanking me after Owen's progress reports. A text from Connor from 6 months ago that just said, "Dad, I don't know what we'd do without you. Seriously." Screenshots of photos from our Saturday outings. Owen holding up a starfish at the aquarium, Lily asleep on my shoulder on the ferry, both of them in my driveway learning to ride bikes. I labeled the folder simply, "Record." I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it yet, but I wanted the facts in one place before I did anything. The next morning, I did something I almost never did. I looked at Diane's Facebook page. She'd posted 2 days earlier a photo of a confirmation email from a Whistler resort. 5 nights, the week between Christmas and New Year's. The kind of mountain lodge with a hot tub on the deck and a spa menu. Based on the resort's website, the package ran somewhere around $5,500. The post caption said, "The kids are going to love this." So grateful for family. I read that last sentence again. So grateful for family. Owen's next block of therapy sessions, 8 weeks worth, was invoiced to me at the start of every month. The January invoice would be $3,200. I'm not a man who does things in anger. I spent 32 years as a high school history teacher. You learn patience in that job, or you don't last. You learn to read a room. You learn that the loudest reaction is rarely the most effective one. So I didn't fire off an angry reply. I didn't call Connor that morning. I made coffee. I took the dog for a walk along the beach path, and I thought carefully about what kind of man I wanted to be in this moment and what kind of message I wanted to send. Then I sat down and wrote a reply to Diane's email. "Hi Diane, thanks for letting me know about Christmas. I understand Raymond's visit is important and that you want the day to feel manageable. I do have one question that I'd appreciate some clarity on. I happened to see your post about the Whistler trip over the holidays. Looks like a beautiful trip and the kids will have a wonderful time. I just want to make sure we're aligned on the January therapy invoice, which will come to me as usual at the start of the month. I want to be thoughtful about how we plan going forward. Could we find time for a quick call this week? Thanks, Walter." I reread it 4 times. It was measured. It stated the facts. It didn't accuse anyone of anything. It asked a question instead of making a demand. I hit send. 3 hours later, Connor called. His voice was tight, in a way I recognized, the voice he used when he was embarrassed and trying not to show it. "Dad, I got a message from Diane. She said your email felt a bit passive-aggressive." I took a breath. I asked a question. "Connor, that's not passive-aggressive. That's communication. She's upset." "I imagine she is. I'm a little upset too." A pause. "Dad, the Whistler trip is a gift from Raymond. It's not our money. It doesn't affect the therapy budget." "I understand that," I said, "but you see how it might look from where I'm standing. Raymond pays for your family vacation, and the same week Diane sends me an email telling me I'm not invited to Christmas, while I'm the one covering Owen's therapy every month." Silence on the line. "That's not how we meant it," Connor said finally. "How did you mean it?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Raymond he doesn't get to see the kids very much. He lives in Calgary. He wanted the day to be special. He lives in Calgary, I said. I live 40 minutes away. I see the kids almost every week. I drive Owen to his Saturday sessions when you and Diane are both working, and I'm the one being asked to come by on the 27th. Dad, Connor, I love you. I love Diane. I love those grandkids more than I have words for. But I need you to hear me on this. I'm not going to keep showing up financially and emotionally for this family while being treated like a courtesy visit. That's not a relationship. That's an arrangement. I heard him exhale. What do you want me to say? I want you to think about what I just said. Really think about it. And then I'd like the three of us, you, me, and Diane, to sit down and talk. In person, not by email, not over the phone. And Raymond? If Raymond is involved in how decisions get made in your household, then yes, Raymond too. The silence that followed was long enough that I thought he might have hung up. Then, I'll talk to Diane. Thank you, son. I spent the next few days in a quiet kind of waiting. No word from Connor or Diane. No acknowledgement of what I'd said. No offer to meet. Nothing. I walked the dog, worked on the rocking chair, read in the evenings. I thought about my father, who had been a quiet man with a long memory and very clear sense of what he was and wasn't willing to accept. He used to say, "You teach people how to treat you, Walter. Every time you let something go without saying a word, you're teaching them that it's fine." I'd spent years being a student who wouldn't learn that lesson. On December 12th, I received an email from Diane. Breezy, friendly, no mention of our last exchange. "Hi, Walter. Just a reminder that Owen's January session block starts the 6th. The clinic mentioned they'll send the invoice directly to you as usual. He's doing so great his teacher said he read out loud in class without any prompting last week. We're all so proud. Hope you're having a good December, D." I read it and felt something settle in my chest. Not anger exactly. Clarity. She wasn't going to bring it up. She was going to act as though nothing had been said. Send me a cheerful update about Owen, and expect the money to come through on schedule while I spent Christmas Day alone on Vancouver Island. I opened my folder. I added the email to it, and then I wrote back. "Hi, Diane. Thanks for the update on Owen. That's wonderful news about the reading, and I'm so proud of him. I do want to revisit our conversation from last week. I haven't heard back about meeting in person, and I think it's important that we do before the end of the month. I'd like to have an honest conversation about what our family arrangement looks like going forward, including the therapy support. Please let me know when works. Walter." This time, it was less than an hour before Connor called. "Dad, what do you mean going forward? Are you saying you're going to stop paying for Owen's therapy?" "I'm saying I'd like to have a conversation before making any decisions. That's all. He needs those sessions, Dad. You know what he's been through." "I know exactly what he's been through. I've been there every step. That's actually part of what I want to talk about." A pause. Then, quietly, "Okay, when?" "This Saturday. My house. 3 o'clock. You and Diane. And if Raymond is still in town, he should come too." Connor hesitated. "Raymond leaves on the 22nd. Then the 21st works. Bring him." Saturday, the 21st, they pulled into my driveway at 3:10. Connor looked tired. Diane looked like she was steeling herself for something. Raymond walked in behind them, a big man, broad across the shoulders, with the comfortable authority of someone who was used to being the most important person in any room he entered. I'd set the kitchen table with 4 chairs and a simple arrangement, my folder of documents, 2 printed summary pages, and 4 cups of coffee. I didn't make it look like a courtroom. I made it look like a kitchen table conversation, which is what it was. "Thanks for coming," I said. "Sit down, please." Raymond looked around the room with mild amusement, as though he found this quaint. I waited until everyone was seated. "I want to start by saying that I love my son, and I love Diane, and those grandkids are the best thing in my life since I lost Carolyn. I'm not here to fight anyone. I'm here because I think we've got some things that need to be said out loud, and I've always believed that problems get smaller when you look at them directly." I slid the summary sheet across to Connor and Diane. "Over the past 2 years, I've contributed just under $38,000 toward Owen's speech therapy and occupational therapy. That doesn't count the birthday gifts, school supplies, winter clothing, or the weekend outings. It doesn't count the gas or the time. I've done this because I love Owen and because I believe in what the therapy is doing for him. I didn't do it to hold it over anyone." I looked at each of them, but I got an email telling me I'm not invited to Christmas. And a few days later I saw a post about a $5,500 ski trip to Whistler, and I'm sitting here trying to understand how those two things fit together. Raymond opened his mouth. Now, Walt. Raymond, I'd appreciate it if you'd let me finish. He looked surprised. Maybe no one had said that to him in a long time. But he closed his mouth. I'm not upset about the Whistler trip. If you want to give your daughter's family a gift, that's your business. What I'm upset about is the pattern. When money is needed, I'm part of the family. When it's a matter of who sits at the Christmas table, I'm a nice afterthought. I've let that go too many times, and I'm not going to let it go anymore. Diane's eyes were filling. Connor was staring at the table. I turned to Raymond. You've been making yourself the center of this family for years. Little comments, little maneuvers, deciding that Christmas is immediate family when it suits you. Flying in and reorganizing everyone and flying back to Calgary. And my son has let you because it's easier than pushing back. I understand that. But it's done some damage, and I think you know it. Raymond's jaw tightened. I'm not going to sit here and be accused of. I'm not accusing you of anything, I said. I'm describing what I've observed. There's a difference. I kept my voice level. You're Emma and Lily's grandfather from their mother's side. That's real, and it matters. But you don't get to decide that I'm less important because you fly in twice a year with a bigger check. The room was very quiet. I looked at Connor. Son, I need to hear from you. Connor raised his head. He looked at Diane, then at Raymond, and then at me. I watched him working through something. I'd watched that same expression on his face when he was 16 and trying to decide whether to tell me the truth about something. He had the same look now, 41 years old, and still that same expression. He cleared his throat. You're right, Dad. His voice was rough. We've been taking advantage of you. Not on purpose, maybe, but that's what's been happening. He glanced at Raymond. And I've let the boundaries get blurry because it's easier not to have the argument. That's on me. Diane made a small sound. Connor, no. He said it gently but clearly. No, he's right. Dad has been at every therapy appointment that we couldn't make. He's the one Owen asks for when he's upset. And we sent him an email about Christmas like he was someone we needed to manage. His voice broke slightly on the last word. I'm ashamed of that. Raymond stood up. I think this has gotten a little out of hand. Sit down, Raymond. It was Diane who said it. Her voice was quiet and shocked me, I think, most of all. She was looking at her father with an expression I hadn't seen from her before, not defiance exactly, but something tired and clear. Please, sit down. He sat. She turned to me. Walter, I owe you an apology. A real one. Not a sorry if you felt that way apology. I handled Christmas badly. My dad suggested it, and I went along with it without thinking about how it would feel from your side. And then I sent that follow-up email about the invoice like nothing had happened. She shook her head. That was wrong. I knew it was wrong when I was writing it. Raymond looked at his daughter. Something shifted in his expression, not quite remorse, but something in the vicinity of it. He was a man who loved his daughter. I'd never doubted that. Sometimes that love just came out sideways. After a moment, he said, Walt, I'm not good at sharing space. I know that about myself. My ex-wife told me that for 20 years, and she was right. A pause. I didn't mean to push you out. I want to matter to those kids. And I don't always think about how it looks. It wasn't a full apology. But it was honest, and from Raymond, I understood it was significant. I let out a slow breath. Here's what I'd like, I said. I'll continue covering Owen's therapy through to the end of June. After that, I'd like you both to take over that responsibility. Not because I don't want to help, but because it's important that you build the financial footing to sustain his care yourselves. That gives you 6 months to plan. Connor nodded. That's fair, more than fair. Second, I expect to be included in major family events. Christmas, Thanksgiving, the kids' birthdays. When Raymond visits, great. I'm glad he comes. But I'm there too. If that requires some coordination, we coordinate. Of course, Diane said quietly. Third, my Saturday mornings with Owen and Lily stay. Those aren't optional, and they're not a favor. They're what grandfathers do. They love those Saturdays, Connor said. Owen talks about them all week. I felt my throat tighten. I hadn't known that. Raymond leaned forward. And what about me? Where do I fit in all this? I looked at him steadily. You fit in exactly the same place I do. As a grandfather who shows up, does his part, and doesn't try to edge the other one out. There's enough room for both of us in those kids' lives, Raymond. There always was. That was never the problem. He looked at me for a long moment. Then he gave a single nod. We talked for another hour. The conversation went to quieter places. Carolyn came up, and Connor talked about how much Owen had started to remind him of her, the same curious, serious expression she used to have. Raymond told a story about Diane as a kid that made her laugh despite herself. The coffee got cold and I made more. Raymond left first. At the door he paused and said, without turning around, "You ran a good meeting, Walter." It was the most he was capable of, I think. I thanked him. After Diane went to start the car, Connor stood in the doorway of my kitchen and didn't move for a moment. "I keep thinking about Mom," he said. "She would have sorted this out years ago." "She would have," I agreed. "But maybe it's better this way. You sorted it out yourself." He looked at me. "You really scared me with the therapy thing, you know. The thought of Owen losing those sessions. I know. I wasn't going to do it, but I needed you to understand what was at stake." He nodded slowly. "I think I do now." He hugged me at the door, a real hug, the kind we hadn't exchanged in longer than I wanted to count. I stood on the porch and watched the taillights disappear down the road. And then I went inside and stood in the kitchen for a while, in the quiet. Christmas that year was full of the small awkwardnesses you'd expect. Raymond was cordial, careful. He made a point of sitting next to me at dinner, which I think cost him something, and I appreciated it. Owen presented me with a card. He'd made himself a drawing of the two of us on the ferry, stick figures with enormous smiles, and when he handed it to me, he said clearly, without hesitating even once, "I made this for you, Grandpa, because you're my best person." Lily promptly announced that he was also her best person, which started a negotiation that lasted through dessert. Diane made a toast before the meal. She thanked everyone for being there, and then she looked at me and said simply, "And we're grateful to have you here, Walter. We mean that." Raymond raised his glass. Here. It wasn't the end of every difficulty. Raymond is who he is, but he no longer makes comments about my involvement or positions himself as the one who matters more. He seems to have made a quiet peace with the fact that the kids have two grandfathers and are better for it. Connor and Diane picked up Owen's therapy billing in July. It took some reshuffling on their end. They gave up a streaming service subscription, a gym membership, and what Connor described as an embarrassing amount of takeout. He said it with a laugh, but I heard the pride underneath it. I still pick up Owen and Lily on Saturdays. I'm at every school event, every recital, every moment they invite me to. Owen is 9 now, and reading 2 grade levels ahead. He told me last month that he wants to be a scientist when he grows up, and that he wants to study earthquakes because, he said very seriously, they're basically the earth losing its temper, Grandpa. I think about Carolyn on those Saturdays, about all the things she taught me without ever saying them directly. How to be patient, how to be present, how to hold your ground without raising your voice. I didn't always get it right. I let things slide for too long, told myself I was keeping the peace when really I was just avoiding the discomfort of being honest. The rocking chair, the one I was sanding when all of this started, sits on my back porch now. Owen likes to sit in it when they visit. He'll rock and think and sometimes ask me questions about history that catch me completely off guard, what wars were about, why some people are mean, whether people were always the same as they are now. I don't always have good answers, but I'm there to hear the questions, and I've learned that being there reliably, consistently, without conditions is the truest thing a person can give. There's something I've come to understand about families that I wish someone had told me earlier. Generosity without boundaries doesn't become love over time. It becomes expectation. And the people who love you most, the ones who really love you, don't need you to be endlessly accommodating. They need you to be honest. They need to see that you know your own worth, because if you don't, they'll stop seeing it too. The hardest conversation I ever had at that kitchen table turned out to be the one that saved everything. Not because it fixed anyone or changed anyone overnight, but because it made us honest with each other. And honesty, even when it arrives late, has a way of clearing the air so completely that you wonder how you ever breathed before it. If you're in a situation where you've been giving and finding yourself quietly moved aside where you're useful on some days and invisible on others, I want you to hear this. Your presence is not less valuable than your contribution. You do not have to earn your place at the table in your own family. And speaking up for yourself is not selfishness. It is the most loving thing you can do, for everyone involved, including yourself. Know your worth, say the quiet thing out loud, and trust that the people who are meant to stay will stay.